Hello, welcome to week 2 of our sock knit along. Since our last video, I hope that you've had a chance to work the top of your foot. I hope that you've gotten familiar with the cable and rib pattern and maybe tried out our technique of cabling without a cable needle. And most of all, I hope that you have been having a lot of fun. This video, we're going to be working some gusset increases and turning our heel. This is my favorite part of the sock. This is where the sock really becomes a sock. So I'm very excited to get us to this point right now. So when you work from the toe up, you're working even until the point where your foot is becoming wider for the instep. And we're just working some increased stitches just to give us a great cozy fit on our instep and accommodate that extra width that our foot takes before it turns into the heel. So when you're working the foot, if you have your foot that's going to be wearing the sock handy, you can try it on now by dividing your stitches on your first needle onto 2 so that your needles, your stitches are on 4 needles, and that'll give you some extra room to slide your foot in there and try it on. So your gusset increases should start right where your foot becomes wider, or about 2.5 inches away from the heel. So the gusset increases are much the same as we did for the toe, but we're only increasing on needles 2 and 3. The top of the foot's going to stay the same. It's going to be worked in pattern just as we've been doing, but we're going to increase on either side of the bottom of our foot. So I ended my last round on round 4 of the pattern. So my first round of gusset increases, you work in pattern across your first needle. So my first row of patterning is a cable pattern. So let's do that without the cable needle. And then we're just going to work all of these stitches on the first needle in pattern even. I'm at the end of this needle, so I'm going to do my C4B. And now at the beginning of needle 2, we're going to work our first increase. So we're going to knit 1. And then in this next stitch, we're going to create 2 stitches. So this is a different increase than we used on our toe. This is called a KFB, and it's called that because we're knitting into the front of our stitch. We're not sliding it off, and then we're knitting into the back of the same stitch and sliding it off. So we've just turned 1 stitch into 2, KFB, knit front back, and then knitting to the end of this needle. Then to mirror our increase, we're going to knit to the last 2 stitches on our third needle. And then in our second to last stitch, KFB, knit into the front of the stitch, but don't slide it off. Knit into the back of that same stitch and then slide it off, making a new stitch, and knit the last one. So that's our increase round on our gusset. And then the second round is just to knit even. So we're not doing an increase, we're just knitting and purling in pattern. So I'm working in pattern across that first needle. And then I am just knitting needles 2 and 3. So that right there is our 2-round repeat. First round, we are increasing with a KFB at either side of the bottom of our foot and knitting the first needle straight. So I'm on an increase round again. I'm just going to knit my first needle. And then I'm going to increase. First I'm going to get some more yarn. At the beginning of my second needle with a knit 1, KFB, knit into the front and back, and then knit to the end of this needle. And then on needle 3, knitting to the last 2 stitches and knitting a KFB and then knitting our last stitch. So just show you the KFB once more. Okay, so I'm at the second to last stitch and I'm knitting into the front and the back and then knit 1. So if you are doing your gusset increases and you get called away from your knitting and you come back and you can't remember if you just worked an increase round or a straight round, what you can do is just look at your work here, and an increase will create this little kind of collar across the stitch. So I can tell because this stitch right at the top of my needle has this little bar across it. So these are my increase rounds. I can tell I just knit an increase round and my next round will be even. So that's an easy way to identify if you are taken away from your knitting or distracted by anything, and you just need to keep track of if you're on an increase or an even round. So just repeat those 2 rounds where we're increasing 1 round, working 1 round even until you have a total on your two needles here, a total count of 48 stitches for your small size. So you would have 24 stitches on each needle since we're increasing evenly. For the small size, for the medium size, you'll have 56 stitches all together on both needles. So that's 28 stitches, or some quick math in my head there, 28 stitches on needles 2 and 3. And for the large size, you're going to have 33 stitches on each needles 2 and 3 for a total of 66 stitches. And that's just on our needles 2 and 3. This stitch count on the top of our foot will stay the same. So after we've done our gusset increases, I'm going to hop back on and show you the most exciting part, the heel turn. Okay, so I've just worked my last round of my gusset increases, which is actually a round that we just knit even, and I'm ready to begin my very favorite part of a sock, which is the heel turn. So if you were with us last year and we knit our cuff down socks, or if you've knit socks before and you normally knit them cuff down, you will know that we normally, when we get to the heel part of the sock, usually there's a heel flap that's knit, and then there are short rows worked on the bottom of the foot here. And then we work gusset decreases. So because we're starting a toe up sock, we're moving in the opposite direction. We've knit even here, we increased at our gusset, and now we're going to do this beautiful heel turn. This method does not require a heel flap, and I really love how this fits. You will see that a lot of toe-up socks use a German short row heel, which is totally fine, but I just feel that this method works really well. It's easy to do, and it gives a really great fit. We'll be working the heel in rows, so we're not going to be working in rounds anymore. We're just going to be working across these stitches where we did our gusset increases. So to do that, what I'm going to do is slide all of these stitches that we just increased with, I'm going to put them all on one needle. And it is important when you're transferring stitches to other needles or sliding them on that you keep them in the same position on the needle. You're not twisting the stitches so that when you come to them, they're ready to be worked. Okay, so I have all of those stitches from the bottom of the foot on one needle, and you can see that shaping that happened from our gusset increases. And now to make everything easier, because we'll be working in rows here, there's not very much room here with all our stitches on those top of foot. So what I'm going to do is just divide these stitches that are on our first needle onto 2 needles. That'll just give us a little bit more room when we are knitting our rows for the heel. So I'm just going to slip them, try to get it as evenly as possible without without taking the time to count. I'm just kind of eyeballing it. So there we go. You can see that gives us a little bit more room now when we're working. If you have a long circular needle that is the same measurement or the same diameter as the needles that you've been working with, you can just slide it on that cable needle, the circular needle as well. So now we are working in rows. So our first row is going to be a purl row. When I stopped my last round of increases, I stopped at the end of needle 3. So instead of continuing along, I'm turning my work and I'm working along the wrong side here. And our first row, we're going to purl across, but not all the way to the end of the needle. For the small size, I'm purling 27 stitches. If you're working medium, you're going to purl 31. And if you're working the large size, you're going to purl 35 stitches across. Okay, so I just purled 27 for the small size, and I am now going to purl the next 2 stitches on my left-hand needle. Purl those 2 together, purl the next stitch, and then turn my work. So I do have all of these stitches here that I have not worked yet. Now on my knit row, I'm going to slip this first stitch. I'm going to slip it knitwise. And then I'm going to knit 7 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this stitch count is going to be the same for all 3 sizes. You're slipping the first stitch and knitting 7. Then the next 2 stitches on my left-hand needle, we're going to do an SSK, slip them knitwise one at a time, and then put them back on your left-hand needle and knit through the back loop, SSK, and knit the next stitch, and turn. So those first 2 rows set us up for all the rest of the heel shaping. So on our purl rows, it's always going to be the same. We're going to slip our first stitch. On this one, we're going to purl 8. And purling 8, I'll show you when I get there. I've purled 8, and now the next stitch on my needle is here, and then there's a space, and then there's the rest of our stitches. So what we're going to do is work these 2 stitches together to close up that space. So I'm going to purl them together. And then I'm going to purl 1 and turn. So these are called short turn rows. It's kind of the perfect name because we are turning just short of finishing the row. And what we're doing, each row, we are working one of our heel stitches together with one of these side gusset stitches, and we are creating that beautiful heel shaping. So on our knit row, slip, we are going to knit 9, and you're just working one more stitch than you did the previous row. So in my purl row I worked before this, I purled 8, and now we're knitting 9. And I know that I am to do my decrease here. I'm gonna slip, slip, knit these two together. And then knit 1 and turn. Okay, so I'll just show you what that's doing now. Kind of see that it's curving up a little bit. And this is how we get this beautiful heel shaping. I love this so much. This is when the sock, I feel like it truly becomes a sock. So I just knit, and now I'm going to do a purl row. So I'm going to purl or slip the first stitch, and then I'm going to purl, I believe it's 10 on this row. So I've purled 10. I'm going to work these next 2 stitches together by doing a purl 2 together, closing that space, that gap between our heel and the gusset stitches, and then purl 1 and turn. So you're just repeating those 2 rows until you have worked all of the stitches on the heel. And once you do that, you will be back at your original stitch count. So you will be back to, let's see here, 28 stitches together for the small size, 32 stitches for the medium, and 36 for the large size. So I'm doing another SSK here, and I'll show you just the tiniest time-saving trick. But once I slip these next 2 stitches, I don't put them back one at a time onto my left-hand needle. All I do is, it's just my little technique, very simple to do. I put my left-hand needle in through the front of both of those stitches. So my right-hand needle is already at the back, ready to knit through the back loops. So I am on the very last row of my heel shaping. I'm just knitting across here, and then at the end of this row and of the row that you are working on, you'll be ending on a SSK. So I'm slip, slip, knit, and then you are knitting your last stitch. And so now all of that heel shaping is done. We've taken all of these increased gusset stitches into our heel now with these very beautiful decreases. And our yarn here is at the end of the needle because we ended on a right side row, which will bring us to exactly where we need to be to start week 3. So in week 3, next week, we will be bringing this 4-stitch cable that we worked on the top of our foot into an 8-stitch cable on either side of the leg. So there's just a few pretty fun things that we need to do to get into that 8-stitch cable. Then we'll be working our pattern, and I'll show you a great stretchy bind off for the cuff. And I hope that you are going to have a great time knitting your heels. I've had a great time showing you how. See you next time.